The idea that, like, Congress can't operate because they wanna be home because of some snowstorm, I call a little BS,
Yeah, but Anna,
personally.
Snowmageddon was like 15 years ago. People have gotten soft since then.
Good morning, I'm Anna Palmer.
I'm Jake Sherman.
And welcome to the Daily Punch, brought to you by Punchbowl News. It's Thursday, January 22nd, 2026. Let's get in the mix. Here are your Washington headlines of the day. Number one, the funding mess. What's happening? Number two, senators, they're just like us, delaying construction on the Senate Hart building. And number three, we've got some news here. Representative Ben Cline says he's next in line to be the next RSC chair. All right, Jake, let's get to it. Before we get into the funding mess, what House Republicans are doing, we've got some news at the top of AM on Speaker Mike Johnson and his fundraising.
Yes, we do. Mike Johnson raised $82 million during 2025, his first full non-election year as Speaker, big amount of money, and that includes a $16 million haul in the fourth quarter of the year, so a big money year for Mike Johnson, who is constantly on the road raising cash, as every Speaker is.
Right.
And also he has the CLF dynamic, too, because the super PAC is a huge part of the House Republicans' political machine. So that's a lot of dough, Anna, and that's what it takes.
Certainly, he has assuaged the concerns that he was not up to the job of bringing in money. There might be other people who've got positives and negatives on how the speakership is going, but the money game, he's gotten good at.
Yes, he has. And the ultimate question is, does it come along with the office or is it the person? And I would say initially it comes along with the office, but then it's the person. Because you have donors have a lot of emotions and thoughts. Imagine it's like sports fans, Anna. They think they know how things should be run. And by the way, guilty as charged. I'm one of those people. I think I know how GW should be run, GW basketball. I think I know how the Wizards, the Nats, UConn, I think I know how they all should be run. And guess what?
A lot of thoughts, folks. A lot of thoughts by Jake Sherman.
No one's looking for my view. Very few people are looking for my view. So I imagine that the speaker, whether it's Mike Johnson, Kevin McCarthy, John Boehner, Nancy Pelosi, any of those folks, they don't really, I'm sure they're not really interested in what their donors have to say, or maybe they are. Maybe they think you're all great. But anyway, let's move on to the mess.
All right, the funding mess. The House Rules Committee will be back in session at 7:30 a.m. today to try to chart a pathway forward to fund the federal government. A reminder here, just 8 days now remain until the shutdown deadline, and House Republican leaders will move today to get a rule out of the Rules Committee, adopted on the floor, and then pass a $4-bill, $1.2 trillion spending package covering the Pentagon, Transportation HUD, Labor HHS, and the Department of Homeland Security. But man, rules are tough in this Congress, and it's been a bit of a mess this week, Jake.
Yeah, there is a lot to discuss here. And the Rules Committee was supposed to meet and report a rule yesterday. They were not able to do so for two main reasons. Number one, the E15 fuel issue, the ethanol-based biofuel. Anna, you and I have been covering this issue for
forever.
Brez, who worked on a fuel report newsletter back in the early 1990s, was telling us that he's been covering this issue since then. If you didn't know, E15, which is, again, an ethanol blended fuel, it can only be sold in non-summer months. So that's, basically September 15th to, I can't remember, but non-summer months. Midwesterners who would benefit tremendously from ethanol being sold year-round wanted to be sold year-round. Midwesterners, who are usually not a problem for Johnson, generally speaking, say they've been promised this provision, the administration is for it, and they need it in this bill. Now, this is a funding bill. This is a government funding bill, not an authorization bill. This does not belong traditionally in a funding bill. But guess what? You know what else is in this funding bill? Lots of other things that don't belong. PBM reform, trade provisions. So they're like, well, if you put all that stuff in there for other people, how about this thing, which, by the way, has bipartisan support? There are a lot of Midwesterners, Democratic Midwesterners, who want this thing done too. So they're like, well, why can't we do it here? Of course, there's problems with the Senate. The Senate is against it. They don't like the language, etc. And also, and I'm not saying that the leadership of the House is doing this because they're opposed, but Mike Johnson, Steve Scalise, and Tom Cole are from traditional oil based states, Louisiana, Oklahoma. Texas is very powerful in the House Republican Conference. They are not traditionally, I'm speaking, this is a generalization. They are not for the year-round sale of E15, and Scalise has been opposed to that back when he was on Energy and Commerce. I asked him about that yesterday. So that is the big issue, and I want to talk about some of the fallout from that, but why don't you
Yeah,
sounds
I
like
just
you
want
want
to.
to
I
kick in
think
there.
it's important because this is just emblematic of the challenges for House Republicans, right? I
For
mean,
sure.
as
Yep.
you say, this is a part of the party that typically Johnson can count on, right? They aren't
Yep.
flexing every week on a certain issue, but they see their colleagues get what they want and they say, hey, all right, now's the time we're going to stand up and do this. And so do they fold? Probably. But this
Yeah,
is
maybe.
just to me the challenge that is the undercurrent right now is everybody in the House has a say. And that is really tough when you're in leadership trying to get anything done.
So the fallout here would be Michelle Fischbach, Minnesota Republican, is on the Rules Committee. If they don't solve this to her liking, they can't get a rule
Right.
out. If they do get a rule out and it's not to everyone's liking, the rule can't pass the floor. Why do they need a rule? Because they can't pass the DHS funding bill under suspension because only roughly 10 Democrats are for it. The Democratic leadership is against it, and they would need 290 votes, which they do not have. They also need a rule to stitch together last week's minibus and this week's minibus, because that would expedite Senate passage, because the Senate cannot process 2 minibuses in 1 week. They just can't. So they're going to have the House is going to have to stitch together the minibus, the 2 minibuses that they passed. That's number 2. And by the way, Anna, I'll just say this now. The House does not. Last I checked, which was late yesterday, the House was not going to send the Senate a CR. Why would they need a CR? Because it's about to snow in Washington, and the Senate is in next week, but maybe they won't be able to be in.
Okay, but I wanted, not that we need to get into the forecast too much, but I was reminded after
You call BS on this? Is that
my
what you're going to say?
commentary yesterday, but by a text. Whereas I'm just saying, Snowmageddon, Senate leader Mitch McConnell kept the Senate there, and
Yeah, I
people
remember that.
had to figure out how to stay in different houses and apartments
Yeah.
that they could go. So I mean, the idea that like Congress can't operate because they want to be home because of some snowstorm, I call a little BS.
Yeah, but Anna,
personally.
Snowmageddon was like 15 years ago. People have gotten soft since then, and maybe they can't make it into town. But I hear you. I agree with you. And the
Certainly, we
Senate.
all know it's coming. I mean, there has
Yeah.
not been more coverage of a storm on the East Coast for days
But then,
beforehand.
Anna, there's also the question is whether this will be a storm. And I'm not a
Yeah.
meteorologist, but
You don't even play one
I
on television, Jake.
no, I don't know anything about it, about forecasts. I just read Capital Weather Gang.
Yeah,
But, Brez is always skeptical about this stuff.
always.
For good reason, because, sometimes they're not right. And let me just say this. If the Senate wants to do something with very few people here, they can.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's controversial, but the government does shut down next week. There's a lot of pressure for the House Rules Committee to make an amendment dealing with gender-affirming care.
Mm.
If that gets adopted, Democrats are going to have a big problem and they'll bolt. So there's all of these dynamics that need to be worked out today. I guess they could go into tomorrow, because the House is technically in tomorrow on Friday. Tomorrow is Friday. But these are really difficult things to work out. The House Rules Committee is back in. I think you said this at 7:30 this morning. They'll just have to report out the rule and all that stuff. We'll keep a very close eye on it. I'll try to get. I don't think I'll get up there by 7:30, but I'll be watching it, and I'll be up there shortly after 7:30. So Anna, that's where we are.
All right, Jake, let's move to the number 2 story of the morning. We've got some news here. A controversial renovation project for the Hart Senate office building is being delayed after senators complained they'd be forced out of their offices for an extended period of time, according to multiple sources familiar with the matter. This is now going to be delayed until later this year, where you could see members who lose their election or retire are already going to be out of their offices. But this is fascinating. This is one of those moments where it's just like the senators are just like us, Jake. They don't want to be inconvenienced.
Yeah, this is a big deal. They are basically trying to harden the Hart building because of its proximity to streets. And the Hart building, if you don't know, and most people listening to this podcast probably do know, or at least are familiar with the Hart building, which is a Senate office building, probably, I would argue, the nicest Senate office building.
Got a great atrium. Great
Beautiful
atrium.
atrium and big windows and stuff like that. But they've determined, and a lot of this is classified, and I don't know what the threats are, but that it's susceptible to some sort of to threats. But they have told a bunch of senators that they're going to have to be out of their offices for 2 years and move to like basements and all this stuff. And senators were freaking out. And they're like, well, we wouldn't have chosen this office. Put new people in here and let us get normal offices or newer offices. And I understand that. This has been a big issue that bubbling below the surface over the last couple of months. And the leadership had to get involved and had to kind of referee this thing. But just for situational awareness, Hart is going to be a mess for a little bit, and it is going to be something that is going to impact the entire Hill and everybody, a lot of people who work up there.
All right, let's run to the number 3 story of the morning. More news. Representative Ben Cline, the Republican from Virginia, is running to be the next chair of the Republican Study Committee and is already touting that he's locked up the race. In an interview, Cline, the current RSC vice chair, told us he's secured endorsements from a majority of voting members of the conservative group.
Yeah. New RSC chair, perhaps, Ben Cline, if he keeps his seat, by the way. There's a big redistricting push in Virginia in which Ben Cline might not even be a member of Congress. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. But the RSC has been obviously a part and parcel to the House Republican majority for almost probably 40 or 50 years now. I think it's waned in influence over the years because it's gotten very big in that it basically encompasses most of the House Republican conference. And so it can never really have a full idea on anything at any point in time. But it's still an important part of the conference. And the redistricting thing, he says he's planning on running in the 6th district as currently drawn. The appetite, in my view, is not there to undo the work of the nonpartisan commission and the will of the voters. As we've covered a lot over the last couple of years, the Virginia Republicans are mulling either a 10-1 or a 9-2 map, which would eliminate all but one. The 10-1 map, the Southwestern Virginia seat, would be the only one that would stay red. So a lot going on in Virginia.
All right, we're going to wrap it up there, Jake, but just want to note for everyone, we've got Pete Aguilar on Flyout Day later today. Going to be a very interesting conversation. We will be talking about redistricting, appropriations, the funding mess, and so much more. Hope you can tune into that. As always, thanks so much for listening. We appreciate it. Have a great day and stay safe, everybody.